LSU is one of the most intriguing teams transitioning from 2023 to 2024. When you look at LSU, you can't help but notice the players they lost. Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr. That trio accounted for a lot of what was a historically good offense for LSU last year. And when you looked at LSU, it was no secret that there was a huge disparity between the offensive and the defensive side of the ball. And going into this offseason, I was operating under the opinion that this offense was going to take 3 steps back and the defense would maybe take a step forward. So to me, this team was poised to take a step back in 2024. Their over-under win total is set at 9, and I was ready to hammer that under. But after looking more into this team, I actually think this offense might not take as big a step back as many people think it might. I think Garrett Nussmeier is poised to have a breakout kind of a season. It's a very interesting offensive line with superstars all over. Maybe the best player in the SEC at left tackle. The receivers, there are a lot more guys out there than you would think. Guys that are set to have big seasons in 2024. LSU always has great receivers. I think they're going to feature some solid running backs this year after Jaden Daniels was so dominant all over the field. You didn't really need a go-to running back last season. I think this offense could be real, guys. And I think Garrett Nussmeier could be one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So I want to preview LSU, and of course, continuing with the theme that we've done throughout this offseason, I want to preview the biggest games on A&M's schedule. We've started with Notre Dame and Texas, and now we're going to preview the midseason duel with the Tigers. So guys, let's get into this thing, but before we do that, if you guys could like and subscribe, that would help me greatly. I'm trying to grow this thing throughout the offseason, bring more fans into the discussion, whether you're an Aggie, an opposing fan base. Let's grow in the offseason so by the time the regular season gets here, we have a nice group of college football fans and Aggies ready to talk football. We have a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys in the comments. You guys have been great. So like and subscribe. That helps me so much. So you've probably heard by now that the OC that led LSU's offense to a historic season with a Heisman-winning quarterback, Mike Denbrock, has gone back to Notre Dame. But instead of bringing someone into the program, the Tigers will lean on continuity. They promoted quarterback coach Joe Sloan to OC and wide receiver coach Cortez Hankton to co-OC. Sloan was instrumental in Jaden Daniels' development, and Jaden Daniels will tell you this. He said it time and time again. He played a big role in the trajectory of Jaden Daniels' college career, where he just got better and better and better until now he's a professional level quarterback, Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, put up gaudy numbers last year. And Coach Cortez Hankton, of course, coached Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas to what they were. And with this offense, when you look at the pieces that they're going to be featuring next season, it's a lot of players from within the program. Only a couple of transfers they're going to be featuring, but everyone else is coming up from within LSU. So it makes sense to kind of lean on continuity there, in my opinion. I think there is risk in not getting like a veteran or really proven offensive coordinator in the SEC. But like I said, this offense features so many guys that are used to the language, used to the culture that's been built there. I think it makes some level of sense to go within, and I think it's a good move. It starts with the quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier. I don't know how much you've seen of him or how much you know about him. He's a fourth-year guy who's entering his first year as a starter. And how often do you see that in college football with the transfer portal era? Not often. So kudos to Nussmeier for sticking it out. It's not like LSU will be playing a brand new quarterback, though. He's played a lot. Most recently, he played in the bowl game where he had his best game to date. He's played in high-level games. He's played versus Georgia, had some really good moments versus Georgia, played against Arkansas. He's played a lot in his last 2 seasons at LSU. But aside from that, this guy has professional tool set, guys. He has a rocket arm. He can improvise. He's big. But his best feature that I've seen from watching his film is his ball placement. He does this at the short, medium, and long-range balls. He can throw guys open. He can throw the ball away from the defender. He can throw it to where only his guy gets it. And he can throw on the run. So when I'm looking at this game, the number one guy I'm circling is Garrett Nussmeier. And you might be saying, okay, what are the weapons he has? He lost Brian Thomas. He lost Malik Neighbors. He has Kyron Lacey back, but those 2 guys accounted for so much of this offense, and then Jaden Daniels' running ability by itself. So regardless of what they lost, I think this is the main factor that LSU's offense has going for it, and that's an extremely, extremely elite O-line. When I'm looking at the best O-lines in the SEC, and as much as this pains me to say as an Aggie, I think the best O-lines going into the year are LSU and Texas. LSU has maybe the best player in the SEC at left tackle right now. Will Campbell is currently projected as a top 10 pick next draft. And if he maintains the status quo, he's going to get that. But if he takes another step forward, this guy could be the top pick next year's draft. He's that kind of player. He's going to make a difference by himself. He's going to give Garrett Nussmeier time. And Nussmeier is maybe a little bit less athletic than Jaden Daniels, but he can improvise. This guy can definitely get up and go. He can throw on the run. And a good offensive line is going to help with that. There's not much of a drop-off at right tackle either, man. These guys have really good bookends. They're one new starter on offensive line. They have 4 guys coming back. The 2 guards are back, all veteran players. Center is a younger guy, DJ Hester, but he's a guy that's been drawing praises from the LSU staff, and he was a highly recruited player. But he's been drawing praises since he got there, and he's going to be surrounded by veterans. So there's no drop-off in this O-line. This is poised to be one of the best O-lines in the country. Maybe a little bit young in the depth department, so you really want to hope guys stay healthy there. But this offensive line is going to stabilize all the new that happens on this offense. So after really understanding what they bring back on that offensive line, you really start to get higher on this offense, especially with a quarterback like Nuss, who has all that potential, who has all those raw tools. You look at the receiver room. Lose Neighbors, lose Brian Thomas Jr. Everybody knows it's Kyron Lacey's time, right? Like, everybody knows that. Everybody who looks at who follows college football, you've seen Kyron Lacey there for a couple of years. He's put up good numbers as the 3rd option for a couple of years. It's his time, and he's been touted as a leader in spring. Wide receiver 1, absolutely, guaranteed. He's the guy. And now you might think there's a big drop-off behind Kyron Lacey like I did before looking into LSU, and maybe there is. Guys still need to step up. They have like 6 solid options behind him, guys. Chris Hinton Jr., extremely athletic receiver. He's going to burn people in the SEC. It's going to happen. He's that kind of a player with extreme speed. CJ Daniels, transfer out of Liberty. He's their star transfer on the team. Over 1,000 yards at Liberty. Over 20 yards per reception at Liberty. So this guy has a lot of potential to be a really good weapon for LSU next year. He's a 5th-year guy, another veteran, like Lacey. Hinton's a 4th-year guy, 3 veterans at the top right there. They have a knack for becoming household names at LSU. So I don't know if either of those guys become like a household name, but you have 3 amazing options at the top. And behind that, you have a Mississippi State transfer, Xavier Thomas, played really well in spring, played really well in the spring game. You have Aaron Anderson, the former #1 recruit out of Louisiana in 2022, transferred out of Bama after a year there. He's poised to have a really, really good season. They have the young Kyle Parker, who was a highly recruited guy. So many options in this room. And, of course, guys have to step up. That's what happens in college football. You have to transition. But the level of player they have in there, there's a really good chance they find either another star or just have like 6 or 7 guys in that rotation that are extremely serviceable with Kyron Lacey at the top. I think Lacey and Daniels could be the top dogs in this room, and I think everybody else is just going to be a great option. So initially, I thought this receiver room might be hurting, and it won't be as good as last year, I don't think. But they make up for it with balance, with the rotation, with just so many options. There are so many guys that can step up. And Mason Taylor, 3rd-year starter at tight end, kind of overshadowed last year by their receivers. He's been there for a while. He's been a solid player. He played really well in the bowl game. He's a great blocker. They use him in some of those gap scheme plays as like a pulling blocker, or they use him in that role off of motion. Really, really solid player. Mason Taylor, keep that name in mind. That might be one of the best tight ends in the country when it's all said and done. And at running back, not a big running back-oriented team last year. They lose their leader in Diggs. However, they do have a couple of guys that are really, really promising there. And with an O-line that is poised to be as good as it will be, it's going to be a really good offensive line. A guy like Caleb Jackson, who's probably going to be running back 1 in their system, he looks really, really solid in the spring game. He has a really good combination of side and speed. And I think this guy has a chance to be one of the top running backs in the SEC behind that offensive line with the passing threat that Garrett Nussmeier brings. And the former walk-on Josh Williams, he's just a clear running back too, just a great option off the bench, a guy that can spell, a guy that's been there for 6 years. Solid 1-2 combo at running back with Caleb Jackson is probably the leader in that room. Like I said, maybe not by himself, but with this offensive line, could be a star. So offensively, a much more balanced look, where last year Jaden Daniels was the offensive hub. He could run, he could pass, he could improvise, he could do things off script. But overall, this offense, I think, should have a lot more diverse threats attacking a defense. And maybe they take a step back, but they're definitely not taking like 3 steps back like I thought before reviewing this offense. So I really don't think this offense skips a beat. It's probably like a top 15 offense next year, guys. It really is. So I'm putting that to bed. I don't think this offense slips as much as you might think given the pieces missing. So I just hyped up LSU for about 10 minutes there. And I know as Aggies, it's painful to hear. It hurt me to say it. It'll feel a lot better talking about the defense. Looking at this defense, I expected improvement given the changes in the coaching staff, and something had to change. You can't totally overhaul your roster if players aren't up and willing to leave. You can't leave your roster depleted. Brian Kelly's talked about not maybe chasing guys in the bidding wars like some other schools are known to do. A lot of guys coming back, few transfers coming in. The main changes are coming at the defensive staff, and by now you've heard about it. We'll quickly go through some of the names. Defensive coordinator Blake Baker from Missouri. And keep this stat in mind because it's going to be important when you talk about the other names they added on this defensive staff. Missouri held teams to under 21 points a game last year. Missouri had a really good defense last year in their breakout season under Eli Drinkowitz. So they add Blake Baker from Missouri. They add defensive line coach Kevin Peoples, who will specialize in edge rushers from Missouri. Missouri, 11th in the nation in forced sacks last year at 39 sacks. He has 30 years of coaching experience, really good upgrade in that room. Inside on that defensive tackle room, a guy that I'm really high on is Bo Davis. He's a guy that's won championships in the SEC, once under Bama, once under LSU, so he's been at LSU before. Oh, and Blake Baker had a previous stint at LSU as well, the defensive coordinator. Bo Davis, impressive resume, getting players like Ojimo and Coburn in the NFL last year, and then this year, Sweat and Murphy. These were guys that were journeymen at Texas and then became superstars in one season, and these guys were first-round picks. He developed these guys. He can recruit really, really well. Bo Davis is a huge addition in probably their weakest position group on the team at defensive tackle. So those are some big additions on the defensive line, and Blake Baker, a really good defensive coordinator. At secondary, they had Corey Raymond from Florida, an LSU veteran of 10 years, where he produced 7 first-team All-Americans. So this guy had a long stint at LSU before, 7 All-Americans, comes back to LSU after departing Florida. Specializing in safeties is Jake Olson, yet another get from Missouri, that really good Missouri defense last year. Another previous stint at LSU, coached LBs and most recently secondary. He had a 2-time All-American at linebacker at Missouri. So overall, just upgrades in this defensive coaching staff. They needed an overhaul. They needed a change. They got that, and they also just straight up upgraded every position group, at least in terms of resume. So that's good. That's good. But that takes time, right? It takes time for a coaching message to get across. That's what us Aggies are looking at going into next year. We're really confident about players. We're really confident about personnel. But how quickly can they pick things up? This defense struggled in the spring game. It still looked like it had holes in the spring game. It was evident that time will be needed for this coaching staff. So a lot is still in flux in terms of who the guys will be at defensive tackle in the secondary. The one position group where they're going to be solid next year, obviously, is linebacker with Harold Perkins. Obviously, Perkins is going to be the featured player on this defense. When he's been at his best, he's one of the very best players in the country. Took a step back last year. They tried him at middle linebacker last year. That was an experiment that only lasted a few games. They moved him back outside where he played on the line of scrimmage, rushed the quarterback, lived in the backfield. But it sounds like Blake Baker's going to move him back inside, but they're going to be more willing to be versatile with him. They want him to be more involved with the run fits. They want him to be involved in the passing game. They want him to be an impact player all over the field rather than just specializing on running the quarterback. But they're going to let him rush the quarterback. They're going to be more versatile with him, even though he's playing middle linebacker. In the spring game, he looked much improved in his run fits. He looked bigger. He looked stronger. I foresee a major bounce-back year for Harold Perkins, and next to him is a third-year starter in Greg Penn, who brings veteran experience. Should be a really solid linebacker group. When you look at safety, this is where the cracks start to show, in my opinion. So I think the clear starter at safety right now, if you had to pick one clear starter, it's Jordan Gilbert. And us Aggies are pretty familiar with Jordan. In 2022, I hyped him up a lot. I thought he had a ton of potential. I thought he was a ball hawk. I thought he was a dart to the ball. I thought he had a knack for getting his hands on the ball. And I was really excited to see him in 2023. Unfortunately, the last game we saw him in, the Miami game, probably the worst game of his career. Couldn't tackle. The secondary got carved up versus Miami last year. And that was the last time we saw him. He went down with a season-ending injury, eventually transferred. Now he's poised to start at LSU. The jury's still out on Jordan. Most recent sample was not good. So we'll see. The potential is there. I really liked what I saw from him in 2022. He needs to take a step up. Clear starter. Next to him is Sage Ryan, a guy that, after looking at some of the forums of LSU, a guy that that fans had a lot of issues with at corner last year, playing out of position. For Aggies, think about Josh DeBerry playing out of position, just not accustomed to being a corner, burnt several times. Sage Ryan was there, Josh DeBerry last year, but he's moving back to his natural position at safety. And he drew praises in spring, so maybe that's an upgrade there. Maybe the safety room is a lot better than it was before. Major Burns moves to the star position. Another player that LSU fans, had some choice words about But Drew Praise is at the star position in camp, so maybe this is good for him playing closer to the line of scrimmage, getting more involved in the run game. So those are some of the big names in that safety/star room. But at corner and defensive line, that's where they have the most question marks. At corner, their best player right now in spring was a 3-star true freshman, PJ Woodland. Stepped up in a big way, played well in spring, but he came in at 155. He's bulked up to the high 160s now, a smaller player. And that would scare me if you're going into SEC player with a player like that starting. Probably great long-term trajectory in a guy. Just let him bulk up a little bit, let him grow. But it's such a small guy with such little experience starting an SEC play, that looks like a hole to me. Javen Toviano has kind of made waves in spring as well, a guy that Aggies are familiar with. A lot of questions at corner. And like I said before, the biggest question mark on this team probably is at defensive tackle. They have one guy, defensive tackle veteran Jacobian Gilroy. Sure thing. They're happy with him. But Brian Kelly has said time and time again, they're looking for a second guy to step up there. And through spring, that has still not happened. So they'll be looking through this fall camp at their guys, looking for someone to step up into a starting role. They probably have okay depth there, at least 2 deep, but not super high level in that 2 deep. They need a second guy to step up to be a starter at defensive tackle, and that is a bad place to have a question mark at going into SEC play. Teams may be looking to run inside on this team. And then at corner, you have a deficiencies there too. So to me, I see 2 very, very important holes. And I've said this so many times, and I'll say it again. At A&M, we saw how bad the corner room can hurt a team if it's deficient. I think that room was responsible for 2 losses for A&M last year, Alabama and Ole Miss. So if LSU's going to come in with that hole, we know what A&M can attack there. We know what teams will attack there. They're going to attack corner. They're going to run inside on them. It's very scary for LSU going into next year with this defense, I would say. I would say that they are hopeful for improvement, but they're still limited. They're still limited with personnel. They're still getting that Ed O crop out of there. And some of the depth, the Brian Kelly guys, are very promising, but they're all super young. Bunch of sophomores, bunch of true freshmen that are eventually going to be guys, but in the SEC, you probably want some more veteran guys stepping up on defense, especially at corner, especially at defensive tackle. So overall, looking at this team, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think the offense is not going to take as big a step back as people think, and I think this defense is probably still limited. But it'll be the same situation as last year. If this defense can be average defense, mid-level defense, rank in the 50s in most departments, 50s or better in most departments, 40 to 60 range, somewhere in there, playoff contender, absolutely. No question with this offense they have coming back. But can that defense get there? That's a pretty modest goal. I don't even know if the defense can do that. But they have that upside. They absolutely do. So when you look at LSU's schedule, it's really not the worst draw you could get in terms of an SEC schedule. They open with a tough neutral site game versus USC. You know Lincoln Riley's going to have a passing game. There's a chance this game is a shootout, man. There's a chance that LSU is unable to stop the USC offensive attack. We know Lincoln Riley runs one of the best offenses in the country. I know they're in a transition right now post Caleb Williams, but if they find themselves in a shootout in week 1, who knows what can happen. So that's a very important game for LSU out the gates, much like A&M has versus Notre Dame. But they get Ole Miss, Bama, and OU, some of their toughest games at home, one of the best home environments in college football. That bodes really well for them. They only really have one tough road test in A&M, and we'll talk about that game in just a second. But most of the tough games at home, that's really, really good for LSU. So there's definitely opportunity for 10 wins on this schedule, I would think. I would think given this offense, if the defense can play a little bit better, this could be a 10-win team for sure. But I'm really focused on that October 26th game in Kyle Field versus Texas A&M. A couple of areas I'd be looking at if I'm an Aggie scouting out this team. I am terrified of Garrett Nussmeier. I've seen him play enough. I know this guy can wheel and deal. He can extend plays enough. He can throw on the run. Amazing ball placement. If A&M's secondary is not taking the leap that we're hoping it does this season, there's a chance he can carve him up, because this is one of the few offensive lines that will probably be able to somewhat slow down A&M's pass rush. And we think A&M has one of the best defensive end groups in the country. Well, LSU has one of the best, if not the best, offensive tackle groups in the country. So they could match up well against A&M there. And even if there's some leakage, Nussmeier can improvise and make things happen. So when I look at the film, I really look at Nussmeier as a guy that can really make A&M pay. Unless A&M's secondary actually does step up in a big way going into next season, I think A&M's secondary, if that's the case, if we see improvement, can match up okay with these LSU receivers. But if Nussmeier is able to extend plays, That's what scares me personally. And if they're able to run, they're able to form a great running attack with Caleb Jackson and this really good offensive line. I still have some questions about A&M's interior run stop capabilities, not really having a true nose guard on the team, shuffling out Edgerrin Cooper and bringing in a new linebacker next to Torin York. Maybe that's a point of concern, but I'm really looking at the Nuss Bus as the number one circle for A&M against LSU. However, I think A&M can have success against LSU's defense just like a lot of teams probably think they can. If Connor Wigman comes back, he's healthy, he plays the level we think he can. If the O-line takes that step forward, we're very excited about this running back room. We're very excited about these receivers. We're really excited about a healthy Donovan Green. I think A&M could put up a lot of numbers against LSU's defense. I just see so many holes on this defense. I think LSU's going to find themselves in a lot of shootouts once again. So it's going to come down to A&M's ability to stop Nussmeier. That's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at an elite quarterback. I'm looking at a professional NFL-level quarterback. Can A&M slow him down? Can A&M get bodies on him? I don't know. That's going to be the big question mark. So I'm really looking forward to that game. It's a game where the home team has won, I think, like 6 years in a row. A&M gets them at home. That bodes really well for A&M. A&M has really good home slate this year. Missouri, Notre Dame, LSU, Texas. Toughest games on the schedule, all at home. This is another one on A&M's home schedule. So, guys, right now, A&M is a slight favorite at home against LSU, according to DraftKings. I think A&M has a really good chance to win this game at home, given how the home team has been successful in this series, given the fact that this defense probably has a lot of holes in it. I think A&M's offensive line will take at least a small step forward. That'll be enough against a lackluster defensive tackle room and a decent defensive end room. I think A&M could probably mask some holes, if there are any, with this offensive line against a defense like this. So I think A&M has a great opportunity to beat LSU in this game. I'm so glad it's at home. If it was on the road, I would feel very differently about this game. But like the other big games I just mentioned, at Kyle Field. So guys, what do you think about LSU this year? Am I too high on this offense? I feel like it doesn't really skip a beat, man. I really do. But if I'm too high on them, let me know. Am I too low on this defense? LSU fans, you might have something to say about that. I'll hear you out. I want to hear what you guys think, how you guys feel about the team. I want to hear from you guys. But that's it, guys. I want to keep previewing these big games for A&M. I'm really intrigued to see what happens with LSU this year after so much elite turnover last year, but so many interesting pieces poised to rise up on this offense. I want to see what this defensive coaching staff can do with the defense. Interesting team to watch. I'll be keeping an eye on them throughout the entirety of the season. So guys, like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Gig 'em.